Cheers, honky.
Television in the 1970s was a different world. Families gathered around one set. Remote controls were a luxury, and if you missed an episode, you had to wait for the rerun. There were only a handful of channels to choose from, but what made this era truly special was how TV started pushing boundaries in ways that shocked America. Some shows pushed too far. Some never made it past a handful of episodes. Others faced boycotts, protests, and affiliate stations refusing to air them. These are the 10 most controversial banned sitcoms from the 1970s. Number 1, Hot L Baltimore.
You cheat! Why would I cheat, you abominable old...
Norman Lear was already a household name in 1975, with hits like All in the Family and The Jeffersons. But when he brought Hot L Baltimore to ABC, even the network knew they were walking into a firestorm. Based on a Lanford Wilson play that had won critical acclaim off-Broadway, this sitcom was set in a rundown Baltimore hotel with a burned-out E in its neon sign. The cast of characters included 2 prostitutes, one of whom was an illegal immigrant. There was George and Gordon, portrayed by Lee Berger and Henry Calvert, one of the first gay couples ever shown on American network television. The hotel manager, played by Charlotte Rae, years before she became famous on The Facts of Life, tried to keep order among residents who had nowhere else to go. ABC knew what they had on their hands. For the first time ever, the network placed a warning at the beginning of each episode, cautioning viewers about mature themes. The disclaimer ran before every single episode. Baltimore's own ABC affiliate, WJZ-TV, refused to air the show entirely. Residents had to tune in through the Washington station WJLA if they wanted to watch. The characters weren't stereotypes played for cheap laughs. George and Gordon were portrayed as real people, not caricatures. The show treated them with dignity, having audiences laugh with them rather than at them. This was groundbreaking for 1975. The show featured James Cromwell and Conchata Ferrell before they became famous. Despite a full marketing campaign from the network, audiences stayed away. After just 13 episodes, Hot L Baltimore became Norman Lear's first failure. The controversy was simply too much for America to handle. Number 2, Chico and the Man.
Hi! What are you doing in here? Hey, man.
When Chico and the Man debuted in September 1974, it looked like NBC had a hit on their hands. The show starred Jack Albertson as Ed Brown, a cantankerous garage owner in East Los Angeles, and Freddie Prinze as Chico Rodriguez, a young Chicano man looking for work. The chemistry between the veteran actor and the 20-year-old newcomer was electric, and the show quickly climbed into the top 5 in the ratings. Albertson had already won an Oscar and a Tony Award. Prinze was a stand-up comedian discovered on The Tonight Show. The premise had potential. Ed was a widower, lonely and bitter, slowly being won over by the optimistic young man who refused to give up on him. It was a story about bridging generational and cultural divides, but the controversy started almost immediately. Hispanic advocacy groups picketed NBC's Burbank headquarters, carrying signs and demanding changes to the show. The word Chico itself was considered insulting, similar to calling an African-American man boy. Critics pointed out that Prince wasn't even Chicano. He was Puerto Rican and Hungarian. The show's use of ethnic slurs, even when played for laughs as Ed's character softened toward Chico, drew fire from community leaders who saw it as perpetuating harmful stereotypes rather than challenging them. In the pilot episode, Ed tells Chico to leave and take your flies with you, a racist remark that made audiences gasp. Week after week, Ed would make comments about Chico's ethnicity, his culture, his background. The show tried to balance this by having Chico respond with pride and dignity, correcting Ed's misconceptions with humor. But activists argued that no amount of comebacks could erase the damage of hearing those slurs on primetime television. Prince even had to change his catchphrase. Originally, he used "that's not my job" from his stand-up routine, but complaints that it reinforced the lazy Hispanic stereotype forced him to switch to "looking good." Despite the protests, the show ran for 4 seasons. But behind the scenes, Prince was struggling. Fame came too fast. On January 28, 1977, during the show's 3rd season, Freddie Prinze fatally shot himself at age 22. The show tried to continue without him, bringing in 12-year-old Gabriel Melgar as Raul, but it was never the same. Number 3, Welcome Back, Kotter.
Dave, are you awake?
No, I'm asleep.
Boston banned this one before it even aired. When Welcome Back, Kotter premiered in September 1975, most of America fell in love with Gabe Kotter and his sweat hogs. The show was based on creator Gabriel Kaplan's own experiences teaching remedial students in Brooklyn. It was funny, heartwarming, and featured one of the greatest TV theme songs of all time. But Boston's ABC affiliate, WCVB, refused to broadcast the show for its first 5 episodes. The official reason was concern that a show featuring non-academic high schoolers might inspire local students to become slackers. Station executives worried that celebrating underachievers would send the wrong message to young viewers. After all, the Sweat Hogs were proud of being remedial students, constantly getting into trouble and challenging authority. What kind of example was that? The real story was more complicated. Boston was in the middle of a desegregation crisis, with court-ordered busing sparking protests and violence across the city. White parents in South Boston were fighting to keep their children in neighborhood schools. African American students were being bused into hostile environments where they faced daily harassment. The station feared that showing an integrated classroom with a multi-ethnic cast, African American Freddie Boom Boom Washington and Puerto Rican Juan Epstein among them, might inflame tensions during an already volatile time. The irony was that Welcome Back, Kotter showed exactly what integration could be at its best. The Sweat Hogs were a family, supporting each other across racial and ethnic lines. They faced their challenges together. But in 1975, Boston, even that positive message was considered too risky to broadcast. The ban didn't last long. When the show became a top 10 hit nationwide, with rating success that couldn't be ignored, WCVB quietly added it to their schedule after those first 5 episodes. Welcome Back, Kotter went on to become one of the decade's most beloved sitcoms and launched John Travolta's career as Vinnie Barbarino. The show ran for 4 seasons and created catchphrases that became part of American culture. But for a brief moment, Boston's Banned in Boston reputation extended to primetime television. Number 4. All in the Family.
Look at that information. Oh, get that ugly criminal away from me.
It's hard to imagine now, but when All in the Family premiered in January 1971, CBS executives were terrified. They placed extra operators at the network switchboard to handle the anticipated flood of angry calls. The premiere episode alone featured the racial epithets kike, spade, and spick coming from Archie Bunker's mouth, along with language like hell and damn that had been taboo on television. Nothing like this had ever aired during primetime. Norman Lear created something revolutionary, a sitcom that tackled racism, sexism, abortion, impotence, and generational conflict head-on. The show was based on a British series called Till Death Us Do Part, but Lear made it distinctly American. Archie Bunker, played brilliantly by Carol O'Connor, was a working-class bigot whose views clashed constantly with his liberal son-in-law Mike, whom he called Meathead. Mike was played by Rob Reiner, and their arguments became the centerpiece of the show. Archie worked as a loading dock foreman in Queens. He loved his country, feared change, and expressed his prejudices loudly and without shame. His wife Edith, played by Jean Stapleton, was sweet and ditzy, but sometimes showed surprising wisdom. Their daughter Gloria, played by Sally Struthers, was caught between her father's old-fashioned views and her husband's progressive politics. Every episode was a battle between the past and the future. The show won 4 consecutive Emmys and dominated the ratings for 5 years straight, but it also sparked endless debate. Some viewers saw Archie as a critique of outdated prejudice, a character meant to expose how ridiculous bigotry sounded when you actually said it out loud. Others celebrated him as a hero, laughing with his bigotry rather than at it. There were reports of people using Archie's language in real life, thinking it was acceptable because they'd heard it on television. Religious groups protested the show's frank discussions of sexuality and abortion. Advertisers worried about associating their products with such controversial content. Several CBS affiliates either delayed the broadcast or refused to air certain episodes. One episode about Edith's menopause was shelved entirely and never aired during the original run because CBS deemed it too controversial for primetime discussion of women's health. The network believed that talking about menopause would make viewers uncomfortable, so the episode sat in a vault for years. All in the Family changed television forever. It proved that sitcoms could tackle serious issues and still be funny. It opened doors for other shows to push boundaries, but it also showed how difficult it was to satirize prejudice without accidentally reinforcing it. Number 5. Soap.
Care if I'm getting messed up?
Less.
This is how much I care if I'm messed up.
Before Soap even premiered in September 1977, it had generated 32,000 letters of protest to ABC and only 9 letters in support. Think about that ratio. For every person who wrote to support the show, over 3,500 wrote to condemn it. Religious organizations mobilized after a Newsweek preview incorrectly claimed the show would feature a Catholic priest being seduced in a confessional. The article exaggerated the sexual content and sparked outrage from groups including the National Federation of Decency, the United States Catholic Conference, and the United Methodist Church. The magazine article got several plot points wrong, but the damage was done. Church groups organized letter-writing campaigns before anyone had seen a single episode. One ABC vice president was shocked to learn that his 11-year-old child had been assigned by a parochial schoolteacher to write a letter of protest to ABC, asking the network to take the show off the air. Teachers were using the show as a civics lesson in moral outrage. Creator Susan Harris had designed Soap as a nighttime parody of daytime soap operas, complete with melodramatic plot lines involving murder, alien abduction, demonic possession, and extramarital affairs. The show followed 2 sisters, wealthy Jessica Tate, played by Katherine Helmond, and working-class Mary Campbell, played by Catherine Damon. Their families were spectacularly dysfunctional, getting involved in increasingly absurd situations that mocked the conventions of daytime drama. But the real controversy centered on Jody Dallas, played by a young Billy Crystal before he became famous. Jody was one of the first openly gay characters on primetime television, and his presence sparked protests from both conservative religious groups and gay rights organizations who worried about stereotypical portrayals. Some activists feared the show would reduce gay identity to a punchline. Others worried that Jody's relationships wouldn't be shown with the same respect as heterosexual relationships. When the show premiered, 18 out of 195 ABC affiliates refused to air it. 2 more dropped out after the second week, bringing the boycott to 20 stations. Others broadcast it after 11 p.m. instead of its scheduled 9:30 slot, effectively hiding it from primetime audiences. ABC had to drop advertising rates from $75,000 per spot to $40,000 to keep sponsors from fleeing. Many advertisers pulled out anyway, not wanting to be associated with the controversy. Despite, or perhaps because of, 6 months of pre-show protests, the first episode drew a massive audience with a 25.6 rating and a 39% share. People tuned in to see what all the fuss was about. ABC added a viewer discretion warning that ran throughout the first season, both on-screen and read aloud by announcer Rod Roddy. The disclaimer warned that the show contained adult themes and that viewer discretion was advised. The show lasted 4 seasons and earned critical acclaim, with Katherine Helmond receiving 4 Emmy nominations for her performance. Robert Guillaume's role as the sarcastic Butler Benson was so popular it spawned its own spin-off, but the controversy never subsided. Creator Susan Harris later said that without pressure from religious groups, particularly Jerry Falwell, Soap could have run for many more years. The network chose to end it rather than continue fighting the battles. Number 6. Maude.
Even more afraid of live chickens than picnic baskets.
Maude Findlay was everything 1972 television wasn't supposed to be. A loud, liberal, middle-aged woman who spoke her mind about politics and women's rights. B. Arthur brought the character to life with such force that the show became an instant hit. But in November 1972, Maude did something that would haunt the show for years. In a 2-part episode titled Maude's Dilemma, the 47-year-old title character discovers she's pregnant and decides to have an abortion. This was just months before Roe v. Wade. The word abortion had never been spoken on American television in this context. The episode sparked an unprecedented firestorm. The Catholic Church condemned the show. Over 65 CBS affiliates, including those in Detroit, Miami, and Buffalo, refused to air the episodes. Religious groups organized letter-writing campaigns and advertiser boycotts. When the episodes were scheduled to rerun the following summer, the protests intensified. Nearly 1,000 phone calls flooded CBS offices. Advertisers pulled out. The network decided not to rerun the episodes at all. The controversy followed Maude overseas. Several countries banned the episodes entirely. Creator Norman Lear stood by the storyline, believing television had a responsibility to reflect the real conversations happening in American homes. Number 7. The Jeffersons.
What? You don't have to yell so loud the first thing in the morning.
Well, neither do you.
Where'd you put my key?
When George and Louise Jefferson moved on up to a deluxe apartment in the sky in 1975, they made history as one of the first shows to portray an affluent African-American family. But the Jeffersons, another Norman Lear creation, faced its share of controversy. George Jefferson, played by Sherman Hemsley, was often portrayed as loud, boorish, and every bit as bigoted as Archie Bunker, particularly toward his neighbors Tom and Helen Willis, an interracial couple. Several Southern CBS affiliates initially refused to air the show because of the interracial marriage subplot. The portrayal of a mixed-race couple kissing and displaying affection was too much for some stations to handle. Advertisers worried about Southern markets. Religious groups objected to the show's treatment of marriage and family dynamics. George's character regularly hurled insults at the Willises, using racist language that drew complaints from both white and black viewers. While the show was groundbreaking in portraying black success and upward mobility, critics argued it reinforced negative stereotypes. Despite running for 11 seasons and becoming one of the longest-running sitcoms with a predominantly African-American cast, The Jeffersons never escaped the controversy surrounding its portrayal of race relations. Number 8. Three's Company.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Jack.
Oh, Jack, stop.
Let's dance!
Jack, don't.
The premise sounds innocent enough now. A man and two women sharing an apartment. But in 1977, that setup was scandalous. Jack Tripper, played by John Ritter, had to pretend to be gay so his landlords would allow the living arrangement. The entire show was built on sexual innuendo, double entendres, and misunderstandings about sexuality. Religious groups immediately targeted the show. The concept of unmarried people of opposite sexes living together was considered immoral. The fact that Jack's fake homosexuality was used as a comedic device drew fire from LGBTQ advocates. Network censors fought with the producers over content in nearly every episode. Several ABC affiliates initially refused to air the show or moved it to late-night time slots. Sponsors received thousands of complaint letters. The show's reliance on risque humor kept it in constant hot water with standards and practices. Yet somehow, Three's Company became one of the most watched shows of the late 1970s and early 1980s. The show ran for 8 seasons, representing a time when television was testing how far it could push sexual content while using homosexuality as a punchline rather than a reality. Number 9. Hogan's Heroes.
And a shovel at the same time.
No problem. We'll hold our guns for them.
A comedy set in a Nazi prisoner of war camp. Even typing those words feels wrong, but Hogan's Heroes ran for 6 seasons on CBS from 1965 to 1971, carrying its controversy well into the 1970s through syndication. The show followed American POWs led by Colonel Hogan as they sabotaged German war efforts while being held in Stalag 13. The premise alone sparked outrage. Jewish groups protested a show that made light of Nazi Germany and POW camps. Several of the show's actors, including Robert Clary and John Banner, were actual Holocaust survivors, which added complexity to the controversy. Some saw their participation as reclaiming their narrative. Others saw it as deeply inappropriate. The show portrayed bumbling, incompetent German guards while downplaying the actual horrors of World War II. CBS affiliates in cities with large Jewish populations faced pressure to pull the show. By the early 1970s, as awareness of the Holocaust grew and documentaries brought its horrors into living rooms, the show became increasingly controversial. When Hogan's Heroes ended in 1971, many stations continued to carry it in syndication, but protests followed. Some markets pulled it entirely, others moved it to obscure time slots. The question of whether comedy could or should be set in such a dark historical context divided audiences for years. Number 10. Love Thy Neighbor.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Hey, white boy. What do you think you're doing, huh?
Though it originated in Britain, Love Thy Neighbor became one of the most banned and controversial sitcoms of the 1970s when it aired in various markets. The British version ran from 1972 to 1976, and the premise was shocking even by 1970s standards. A white couple and a black couple living next door to each other, with the white husband Eddie constantly using racial slurs and expressing open bigotry toward his black neighbor Bill. Unlike All in the Family, which used Archie Bunker's racism to critique prejudice, Love Thy Neighbor seemed to celebrate Eddie's bigotry as the source of humor. Racist stereotypes were played for laughs without clear condemnation. The show sparked massive protests in the UK and was banned outright in several countries when syndication was attempted. When American stations tried to carry the British version, the backlash was immediate and fierce. Civil rights groups organized boycotts. Advertisers fled. Most U.S. markets refused to air it at all. An American remake was attempted in 1973, but never made it past the pilot stage. The concept was deemed too inflammatory for American audiences. Love Thy Neighbor remains a fascinating example of how British and American sensibilities diverged in the 1970s. While both countries were grappling with racial tension through comedy, there was a line that American networks wouldn't cross, and this show was firmly on the wrong side of it. The 1970s were a battleground for what television could and couldn't show. These sitcoms pushed boundaries, sparked protests, and forced America to confront uncomfortable truths about race, sexuality, religion, and social change. Some handled controversy with intelligence and purpose. Others simply went too far. But they all shaped the medium we watch today. Looking back, it's remarkable how much has changed, and in some ways, how much hasn't. The debates these shows sparked about representation and the power of television continue today in modern media, just with different shows and different battles. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane and learning about these controversial pieces of television history, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating content. Thanks for watching.